Welcome to Jewish Cinémathèque, where we meet some of the important faces involved with films that tackle aspects of the Jewish experience. There are some who say that there is Greater Israel, and then there is Tel Aviv, in a bubble. Writer and director Idan Haguel introduces us to a vibrant, multicultural, and socially progressive Tel Aviv in his film Concerned Citizen. Tel Aviv is the non-stop city, the city in white. Idan weaves a story about one of its South Tel Aviv neighborhoods in transition and the mix of people who live there. There are gay parades, Eritrean asylum seekers, foreign workers, artists, and even tech people. One's safety might now be in jeopardy, but today you can buy and recondition an affordable apartment in a community slowly becoming gentrified. The high cost of apartments is indeed driving some young people to leave the country.
החלטנו להביא ילד.
ותגידו, אתם רוצים לגדל אותו תא כאן בשכונה?
כן, גם השכונה הזו ממש משתנה. אתה יכול לא להישען על העץ?
סליחה גבר.
תוך שנה-שנתיים מהאזור הזה טירוף.
קלת לי אמא שלי זונה?
חתיכת פשיסט! זהר ממקום!
הפליט הזאת, זה הפליט. תנסה לעצור אותי.
אני מקפיצה.
תהיה אבא מדהים.
אז זה ראייה שלי, אבל.
This is Idan's second independent feature, and the movie is having a theatrical opening and is part of the Israel Film Center Festival in Manhattan. Idan, welcome to Jewish Cinémathèque.
Thank you.
So,
Nice being here.
tell us about how this story evolved, how the film, where did it come from?
It was a very natural progression. I just moved into that part of the city. It's a neighborhood called Neve Sha'anan. I moved there 7 years ago. And by living there and seeing my surroundings and observing and being marinated in that complicated area of the city, it started to engage me into writing the script. So it naturally happened after a few years there. This story came up and I started developing it.
In the film, there's one moment where you have visitors coming in and they hit the keypad and they don't know the number, and she's looking behind her. She seems to be concerned, worried about her safety. Is it not a safe area?
It gets a bad rap, the area. I think it's safer than people assume. But the consensus is that this area is of a dangerous nature. It's not very bourgeois, so it feels unsafe for certain people, especially those characters come from center Tel Aviv, they come from a safer area, so for them to venture into that part of the city, it becomes very tense for them. So this scene is about showing how they are not belonging to this area and fish out of water, and also have their racist thoughts start to surface.
And they say that Tel Aviv is a bubble in itself, but it's also a bunch of different bubbles within the city itself. You chose to live there because it was affordable.
That's true, yeah.
And we read about Israeli artists in particular picking up and moving to Berlin, and we even have one of the characters saying, I'm leaving, I'm going to Berlin. Is there any hope for somebody who's an artist, doesn't have enough money, or they just buy a house in a place like this in South Tel Aviv and
Is there any hope? I don't know. It's a big question. I'm not suitable to answer it, but I think there's always a migration going on of artists in the world. It's every city has its moment in which artists of a certain generation can move into it and find their place. It's a city that financially and it's less settled and allows a free space to blend in and And Tel Aviv used to be that city more in the past. Now it's less like that. And Berlin used to be that city more, and now it's less like that. So it's a constant migration of artists to seek.
For you as an artist, that's a challenge.
Yeah, it is, but yeah.
Now, you shot this film in your own apartment.
That's true. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you based it on your own relationship with your partner.
Not really. No. I didn't base it on my relationship. I did base it on I did satirize on some level my life, my presence in that neighborhood, and used my apartment as a studio. The apartment my apartment looked nothing like the apartment you see in the movie, but
Too bad, it's a gorgeous.
I know, it became more beautiful with the aid of the art director and the cinematographer who helped me create this apartment that became a character in the film that suited the characters more than the apartment I lived in looked like. And because of the nature of the production, we shot and stopped, and because it was a independent endeavor, I found myself after a few days of shooting, stopping the shoot and raising funds for the continuation of the shooting, the production, and then I found myself living in their house, in the character's house. I was no longer in my house because I was living in the studio.
It's
basically.
Fascinating that you call the apartment one of the characters.
It is, yeah.
And it really is, I guess, the whole issue of gentrification and that building and what's going on upstairs and downstairs.
Yeah. I lived in that building. The film was shot in the street. It was very, as they say, close to home. And it became very stressful for me also because when I wrote the script, there was a thin line between me and the characters that I exaggerated the characters a little bit and also played with my life and my experience. But once you live in the character's home, the borders become very unseen. Like there's no borders anymore, so it becomes very stressful. Then you feel like the characters more and more. And for me, it was complex, and also I think it enriched the experience of making the film.
Almost like an Antonioni kind of flavor, this off-screen character influencing the movie making.
Yeah.
The two actors, the film is about so many different things. The film is called Concerned Citizen. What is it? Ezrach Mudag.
Yes.
And the citizen is in his apartment, and he wants to beautify his neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he goes out and what?
Plants a tree.
And then what happens?
He plants a tree in the street, and two immigrants from Eritrea lean on his tree one night, and the tree is very gentle and new and fresh, and he is afraid that they will break the tree, so he goes down to the street and basically asks them not to lean on the tree.
And they respond very nicely.
They respond very nicely, and then they go back and lean on the tree, and then
things
the whole story unfolds from that point.
So we don't want to give away
trip.
Right. We don't want to give away too much of the story, but in fact, what happens is that he calls the police finally. He's frustrated when he sees them leaning again, and then
he basically calls the city police, and he lies that it's public property, and asks them to intervene and asks the people not to lean on the tree, and then he goes to sleep, and in the middle of the night the police arrives, and then he witnesses a violent act that is, at least in his perception, he caused it.
It's interesting that in today's Jewish world, especially in Holocaust education, there's a lot of emphasis placed on the bystander, the person who doesn't act. But so not only does he not act by intervening when he sees this, but you're saying that in part he feels he caused it? All he did was call the police.
But the police arrived, and then they become brutal to the immigrant, So he not only calls the police and causes the brutality, again, in his mind, it's not totally clear in the film if it happens or not. But not only does he do that, but he also is a silent bystander. And for me, at least, to be a silent bystander as an Israeli, as a Jewish person who has been brought up on these stories and this narrative, this historical narrative of the immigrant and the victim.
The other, the stranger,
yeah,
right.
For me to witness these things in my own country is...
Did you witness this personally?
Yes, I did.
Is this what really got you started? Is this sort of a...
Yeah, this is one of the... I witnessed something like that very early when I moved into the neighborhood, and it haunted my thoughts also in my consciousness until a year and a half later I started writing it. 2 years later I started thinking about this as a story.
As a sort of therapy to try and work this out?
I wouldn't say it was a therapy, but maybe it was. It has a level of therapy. It wasn't that conscious. It was like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to solve this. It wasn't that. It happened very organically. It's just like, it was important to me. I felt it was interesting. I felt it had a very strong ironic level that interested me in making that film. And it was also, for me, it was practical. I could make it. And that's a big thing in movie making. It's like, for me, at least, it's if you want to make an independent film, like you have to think of what you have, what you don't have, because you obviously don't have a budget and you obviously don't have a lot of things. But in an independent project, you have to focus on the positive. You have to see what you have. So I had this apartment, I had the building, I had this story, I had my experience. And also there's a scene in the film, a few scenes in the film where the main character goes to a therapist. I shot in my therapist's house also.
That was your therapist actually who did the acting?
No, not the therapist, that was an actor.
He was terrific.
But also Idan Haguel is the name of the actor, and very good. And yeah, but that was the apartment and the clinic. So everything was, I always refer to it as like Alice in Wonderland kind of experience, because you're watching something that you go through yourself, but with actors in it, with a different dialogue and different narrative, but it's very similar to what you experience, but it's completely different at the same time. So everything became really surreal. Seeing the Shlomi Bertonov, the leading actor, sitting in my therapist's clinic with Idan Haguel, the actor who plays the therapist, was very unique to me also.
You talk about being an independent filmmaker.
Yeah.
There was funding from the Rabinovich Fund and some other funds.
After the film was finished.
How hard is it to make a film today? Let's just say, how hard had it been to make a film in Israel? And now with the new government, are you concerned that it'll be even harder in terms of finding funding? So you were not even able to get funding in advance to help you make this film?
No. But how am I concerned? No, I'm not concerned. I don't think about it, actually.
I mean, your two gay men are your main characters.
Yeah.
There are homophobes, although Israel fortunately has a very large percentage.
Who's a homophobe?
Well, there are some in any country.
Homophobes in the movie or homophobes in Israel?
No, homophobes in Israel.
Yeah.
But that's true anywhere. But Israelis generally, the polls show that Israelis are very much in favor, at least the majority of Israelis, of providing rights and equal opportunity to LGBTQ community, and yet there's talk that may be in peril.
Yeah, you can sense it, and it's a movement that's happening now in Israel, and it's very alarming.
What's fascinating is that the Israeli Knesset has actually moved and done a lot of wonderful things in terms of LGBTQ rights. And then the Supreme Court jumped in where the Knesset didn't take it further. I mean, just some statistics that I think our audience would be interested that there was a ban on there had been a ban on homosexuality on the books that was only taken out in 1988.
Yeah, but it's a law that remained from the British Mandate.
Crazy. That
bans sexual acts between men. Yeah.
And in 1993, the Army finally allowed openly gay men. The same year happened in the United States.
But the cancellation of the British law was done in the Knesset, not in the Supreme
This was
Court.
all in the Knesset, to the Knesset's credit.
Yeah.
There's a ban on discrimination. You know, we had the famous Supreme Court case here of the cake and whatever.
Yeah.
That's illegal in Israel. You have to provide services and goods and to everyone.
Yeah.
Are you concerned that that might be in any way in danger?
Yeah, like everyone, I think I'm very alarmed by the situation. I don't know where it's going, but you kind of sense that history is in the making, and we're in the moment of political shift that is, up until this point, we've only read in history books.
And the Supreme Court has also had its place. The Knesset has done a lot of wonderful things, but the Supreme Court has also come in. There was an attempt to pass a law in 2018. Bibi Netanyahu voted against it to allow surrogacy, which is an important issue in your film.
Yeah.
But the Supreme Court ruled in favor of that in just 2 years ago, in 2021.
Yeah, that's true.
So is this something you yourself have talked about with your partner, surrogacy?
Actually, I don't have a partner. I'm single right now.
Okay.
But yeah, we've at the point that I made the film, which the script was written in 2018, 2019, and it was filmed in 2020, 2021.
In the midst of COVID?
Yeah, the second part of the shooting was in the midst of COVID. And before I started shooting the script with my then partner, we debated about having kids, and I think the film reflects my personal dilemmas with the process of surrogacy. It is a mixture of research about the surrogacy process that I did, and it's a mixture of my personal take on it. Is what are my dilemmas, and up until now I haven't done it, but obviously I don't know where I stand with surrogacy, because I can understand people who want to have kids, but I can understand that this process doesn't smell good also.
Although there are a lot of happy people as a result of...
Yeah, of course. It's a very complex situation. It's a complex issue. It's not a clean cut. And I think the film is reflecting
Oh yeah, you can see the debate going on.
The debate about it, yeah.
You are the concerned citizen, as much as the actor in the film.
Yeah.
And you take on a bunch of other issues. You take on the question of Eritrean refugees, and the way they're treated, the fact that they have no rights. What did you hope to accomplish, and how did the Israeli public respond to this when the film was released recently?
I didn't get any response about this issue, actually. I think when they reviewed the film, I think people mostly reflected on the surrogacy issues, and also I think it's about the hidden racism in those liberal characters. So they kind of responded to the satire element of it, but I don't remember any direct comments about...
What did Israelis comment on or react to mostly?
And
both positively and negatively?
They felt like it's for instance, gay couples in Israel felt like the movie's it's like a satire about them. They felt like it's almost personal about them.
Was it not?
It was.
That I think is one of its strengths.
Yeah, it's one of the. I was actually very surprised by how people took it personally, because it's when you write something that's made up, it's not like something you're just following the logic of the story. So, but
you were very careful to cast gay actors.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's not as if they're playing a role that's totally foreign to them.
Yeah.
And there's a great...
Like I casted the apartment as the apartment, the therapist's clinic as the therapist clinic.
Yeah.
I also felt like, for me it was really important when I made this film and when I directed the film is to believe what I saw. Because I'm the first responder, first viewer of the film. So for me it had to be believable. And I didn't want straight actors to pretend to be gay, and also it was also practical because when you're making an independent film you don't have a lot of time on set, so I didn't imagine myself wasting time, so to say, on a straight man, telling him how to kiss another guy or making him feel comfortable, or how to place a hand on the shoulder, how to behave normally, quote unquote, with his partner. And so Shlomi Bertonov and Ariel Wolf, who are the main actors in the film, are not only gay, they're they're a real couple in real life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it came with the immediate intimacy. It was like a ready-made thing you put on set, and they came with their background intimacy, not their background story, because the characters and the actors are totally different people, but they came with this energy that I couldn't reproduce. I needed more time to reproduce.
And it's definitely felt in the film.
I'm happy you say that. Yeah.
There are some who will say, Idan's woke, he's too progressive, socially progressive, we're seeing too many gay films. I mean, it's really not a gay film. It's a film about two gay men who deal with very important issues.
Yeah. It was important for me not to create a gay film, like a great gay genre film.
Right.
I wanted to cross over, and I wanted to be gay characters behaving in the world and dealing with stuff that aren't like in the gay culture so much. They are having a kid through surrogacy, but the main plot of the story and the main conflict in the story and the main themes in the story are not gay culture themes.
He has to struggle, as you had to struggle, with having witnessed this, and there's the bystander issue, but as you pointed out, there's also the issue of what could have been done by you.
Yeah.
I take it you've served in the Israeli army.
Yeah.
And you've probably witnessed some things that you may not have been all that happy about.
Fortunately, I didn't witness because I didn't serve as a combat soldier. So I wasn't part of the whole thing.
But we hear stories everywhere, not just in Israel, but in the United States, all over the world.
Yeah.
It's not totally resolved, and I don't want to get into the ending because I want everyone to watch this film, this wonderful film. But should he have, in your mind, he's watching through a window, which is classic cinema. It's beautiful to watch you. You just do a great job.
Thank you.
Classic cinema, peering out that window as he's not really part of things, but he's part of things.
Yeah. The voyeur, yeah.
The voyeur
This
kind
is
of thing.
the classic cinema part, yeah.
Sort of, it's a reverse Hitchcock kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the front window, it's not the rear one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are no issues, you don't touch at all on the Palestinian question.
No.
And we're hearing that a lot of Israelis who are protesting in the streets are questioning why haven't we done anything and dealt with this and talked about it more. But in a certain sense, is it the Israelis sort of watching but not doing anything about what's happening outside?
I think on some levels you can say it's about the power of the Israeli repression capability to repress what's going out in front of your house.
And Israelis, unfortunately, have had to repress the terrible things that have happened to them over the years.
Yeah, and it's also an issue that is very interesting to me. As like I feel like it's a nation in trauma, and it's also a narrative of trauma that is taught in history, and you are brought up to this trauma and on this trauma, and so how can you be compassionate and understand another traumatic nation if you're constantly reminded of your own trauma? So how can a traumatic person be empathetic to another traumatic person when you are in amidst, a traumatic episode. But it seems in Israel that the traumatic episode never ends. It's something that you're perpetually reminded and re-reminded, and you have to live it.
And in your neighborhood, you have Eritreans who are illegal.
Yeah.
So what do you do? I mean, there's a certain point in time where a community can't afford to keep providing for influx of immigrants. The United States is experiencing that question right now. Where does one put a limit? What is legal? What is illegal? Where does asylum fit in?
Yeah, but I think it's different from the United States because there is a way in the United States to become a citizen for these immigrants.
Asylum seekers, yeah.
Asylum seekers.
Yeah.
But
in Israel, there is no.
In Israel, you have to be Jewish to become a citizen, and I think the only people.
Well, you can become a citizen. You just can't become an immediate citizen.
I think there are almost no way for people from asylum seekers from Africa to become citizens in Israel. I'm not an expert on the subject,
right, but why?
From what I inquired and researched a few years ago, it wasn't possible.
This issue that we're constantly reminded of as we listen to the Torah every week, this idea of the stranger, and you were once the stranger.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful moment in the film, I want to ask you about it, where he senses that again, I don't want to give away plot, but he senses that something terrible has happened to one of his neighbors. Mm-hmm. And he goes upstairs and he sits Shiva with them. I mean, but they clearly aren't sitting Shiva. They're not Jewish. But he sits with them.
It's a form of Shiva, yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about why you decided to include that and what that meant for you? It's a great moment. I just sat there and wow.
I think it's an excuse for him to... I think for me it's an irony moment also because obviously you can't tell them why he's there because he's not they don't really know him, and he offers his condolences but he can't tell them why. So, and also you would think, I think the movie plays with it plays with the audience expectations because I think an audience would like for him to be a better person, a hero in the film, like a hero should be in the film. And I think when he comes into that moment, you would expect him to spark a conversation or spark a friendship or be a little bit more intimate, but he doesn't do that. He can't do that. So he just goes there and is practically not doing a lot. And his neighbors try to have a conversation with him. They are more interested in him than he is interested in them, and
yet he does go upstairs and joins them.
Yeah, he goes up and he does the deed, but he doesn't really. There is an element of a superficiality in the actions of the hero, I think.
And is that an accusation against many people who don't act and don't?
It's not an accusation. It's more of a comment, I think, on a superficial liberalism, maybe. Mm-hmm. Like you act well, you don't mean well. It's not like it's not a deep connection. It's like I sometimes feel like it's manners, okay, but it doesn't come from a deep connection and a deep purpose, and that's the observation of the scene, I think.
Birth. Rebirth. It's interesting that what does he plant on the street but a tree?
Yeah.
Especially for those of us in America who grew up giving money to the Jewish National Fund to plant trees. That's very symbolic. Was that consciously, on your mind, or just it's a part of a beautification process?
No, it was conscious. It started to become conscious on the mind, but it wasn't the initial motivation for that motif. But obviously, growing up in Israel and on the narrative of Zionism and planting trees and making the desert bloom and all that, stuff.
And then the question of surrogacy, and do you give birth to another child? And there's a moment when they're discussing it and they're debating it, and the woman who's in charge of making all of the arrangements says, well, everyone benefits from this. You know, the surrogate mother, you guys, birth, rebirth, the state of Israel.
I think that this is like your interpretation of it. Like this is the part when I say it's good that you have your own interpretation.
Let the audience decide.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it for you. I don't want to say what's my, like, sometimes you get an idea and you just follow the basic how to make this moment real and what would the characters really say and how does it really happen, and then you flavor it a little bit and then you make it, and it's very unconscious. And for me, that's one of the most enjoying parts of it. Is like, it's like going into a process, and then you analyze it yourself. Also, you take it to the editing room, and then you start watching it, and you find there is a layer there that you
weren't even aware of.
Maybe a little, but it comes alive more than you ever thought.
And for you, the audience, that's very much the case, because you now have to watch this film. The film is called Concerned Citizen, and we'll leave it up to you as to how you interpret what you watch. It's a wonderful film.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on doing this. I hope it really provokes a broad discussion within Israeli society. It's desperately needed.
Thank you so much.
All the best.